With us up next is Alex Tait. He's letting me make my own bio again, so I've decided Alex Tait is a Virgo, and are you a Gryffindor? I think you're a Gryffindor, and formerly he works at National Geographic Society. Let's welcome Alex.
Thanks, Katie, and thank you, Elaine and Leo, for organizing PCD. I've done it myself. I know it's a fair amount of work, and it's going great. So I'm here talking to you at PCD about type halos, and it's just a teeny little part of map design. I could say that I'm sort of building on my talk from last year, those of you who were in Montreal, about visual hierarchy and how it's something that really irks me about maps when I see type halos that are vibrating or doing too much or doing too little. And I also thought I kind of came up with a fun title, so I was like, I gotta write something about type halos. The angels or devils, sort of the Dan Brown method of titling your talk. So one of the things I ran into when I was sort of thinking about type halos, of course people have written about this, that same problem John Nelson was talking about. You know, a lot of people in this room have talked about how you integrate typography with your map. But I think type halos in particular, deserve some attention, and I wanted to give my take on it. Like, this is what I think about them, and not just like all the really complex ways you can handle integrating type with your background, halos, knockouts, and otherwise, but also sort of quick and dirty ways, because a lot of times halos are a quick and dirty way to pull your labels off the background. And I encourage anybody who sees people up here talking and thinking, well, I don't really want to do that, my stuff's not completely unique. It doesn't need to be. We need your take on things. So I really encourage people to participate, do your quick 10, 15-minute presentation. It's a lot of fun. So, type halos. We've got some here on, I'm going to enlarge it so you can really see what we're talking about. We're talking about putting an edge on the actual labels themselves to pull them off the background, either to help interrupt a very busy background or to lift them to the higher layer. I often don't think people realize quite how often they're adjusting their visual hierarchy when they just slap halos on. And it's not just traditional cartographic maps, it's satellite imagery with map information, and it can be very effective. This is an incredibly busy background. You can actually read the labels. It's helpful. Now, when you universally apply labels with specks and halos, you get this effect, which is Oman on a light background with a heavy, dark halo. And this is really what got me going. It's like I love this website from USGS. It gives you a continuous strip of Landsat imagery. It just flows across the screen. It's really easy to get mesmerized by it. White label, white town spot, really easy to read in Russia. Universally applied, you get this. Ouch. White labels with this huge halo on them. Yes, you can read them, but they vibrate. I consider this a devil. Now, the opposite problem is if you have maps that don't take adequate steps to pull the type apart from the background, you get things like this that are very, very difficult to read. So I acknowledge the need for them. I mean, sometimes I think maps shouldn't have labels at all, and they would be the best maps that you could have. But you need labels for the most part. So what are we going to do about it? So the problem is labels that overlay busy map artwork with high contrast elements within the background are hard to read. So, in addition to showing you a few quick demos, I wanted to just sort of think methodically through it myself. How do you solve this? So you've got sort of modifying the overall map design. I just created 3 categories that sort of matched what my thoughts were about it. You modify the artwork in the background, or you modify the labels. That's where type halos come in. So modifying the overall map design, you can make the entire map background lower contrast. So your labels, I think this is an underutilized method to make sure that you can read your type. You don't have to have a super contrasty background all the time. Sometimes you don't have a choice. because of things you want to do, but you don't always have to put black casing on roads. Roads can have lighter gray casing with black type and read just fine. No knockouts or halos needed. I think Dennis is nodding. I've seen a lot of Dennis's designs utilize this. Take a look at what Dennis does with city maps. Carefully select your colors. I think people do a lot of this. You use light-colored labels on dark backgrounds. So if you have a mix of backgrounds and your type elements are predominantly on one of those backgrounds, just make sure you match the colors. Move the type elements. Now, I know this is sort of like a lot harder in automatic type placement, but certainly if you have a choice, you don't have to use halos if you move the type around. So it still indicates, and perhaps you could use leaders. I think National Geographic's style on this has been really effective, is to make sure you move type so that it's readable. You can modify the artwork. Classic way is contour numbers that are integrated into the line like this. You could actually cut the artwork. That was sort of the old style, and then make it no stroke, no fill. That causes all sorts of grief. You don't want to do that. You can do really fancy masking or knockouts, and that can really work well with busy line work. You can modify the labels themselves. And this is where halos come in, and they make a visual gap with the background that helps the label's readability. You can also, as this OpenStreetMap's design does, you can stick things in boxes. That eliminates the problem with the background. You can make an easy high contrast with labels in boxes. So a quick side note on masks and knockouts. I'm not going to demo them. They are really effective. They're a lot more complicated to do. They're a lot harder to do sort of globally and multi-scale tile sets. Knockouts are a challenge. I wrote a little how-to on that a while back in Illustrator 3. Our friend Daniel Huffman has written quite extensively about this on his blog. I encourage you to read his type knockouts in Illustrator using masks. He's got a second post, I don't remember when it was from, Daniel, on this as well. If you want to be able to go into Illustrator and do all these incredible graphic enhancements, I call it going the full Huffman. So we're going to talk about not going full Huffman. Type halos are used all over the place, not just on multi-scale pan and zoom maps, newspaper maps. They are a quick way to get readability for your text. I think the problem is, and this is a style, we were guessing what styles these were. Anybody guess what style this is? Recognized? Newspaper? Washington Post. Not picking on anybody, I worked at the Washington Post. I had to make 5 maps in an afternoon. I know what it's like. You got to do quick. But you do end up with halos that don't match the background. So let's take a quick look at a bit better. Whoops, sorry, back here. I'm going to jump out and go to my current. Now this is a challenge. Do anybody know, is it going over that way? Is it going up? Is it going this way? There we go. Oh, wow. I'm over here and it's over there. You know what? That is just not going to work. So I was going to demo some neat tools in Mapbox, and I just, is there any way to mirror this? Anybody know how to do a quick mirror on it? No, okay. All right, God, just barely. Okay, so we got halos. This is a default Mapbox base map, and I'm just working in Mapbox because I was using it. I thought I might be able to demo Mapbox and ArcGIS Online and QGIS, and no way. So we can see that we have some city labels with a hard white, thanks Leo, hard white halo. There's some great tools in Mapbox if they come up. Why aren't they coming up? There we go. So we can go down. Of course, it's not going to be interactive now. But we've got a white halo. And if we just modify that white halo and make it a little bit darker, that just eases the eye. You don't vibrate. So that Norfolk label doesn't vibrate. So you go from white, which a lot of people just use as a default. I want maximum contrast with my black. So just like the Washington Post, you pick a neutral layer, a neutral sort of median background color, average background color. The other thing that I think is helpful is to, let's go back here, and I got to admit that I'm happy with some of the tools that Mapbox put in here. I hadn't played around with them before, but you can blur. So we've got a half-point blur, and that just takes the hard edge off. It vibrates less. You can also change the width and go from 1 point to 2 point. I actually find that people tend to use really narrow halos because they don't want it to just sort of blow everything out. I think you get more vibration with little halos sometimes than with bigger halos. It's a balance. You got to play around with it. All right. Halos in Adobe Illustrator are also possible. And of course, you have a lot more ability to modify them. So that's getting the Grand Teton with a subtle label to pull it off the background. One thing I'd like to sort of highlight about working in Adobe Illustrator, I was using an outer glow. I didn't realize you could just pile up outer glows in Illustrator. I thought, because I maxed out the outer glow with the white halo and it wasn't enough. Well, you can add a second one. Easy as that, just put it at like 8%. You got to crank the percentages down. But a little trick in Illustrator, everybody probably already knew, but I didn't, is you can get multiple copies. Keynote. So you can get subtle, really nice, subtle, and of course, Illustrator, you can have the transparency, you can change the blending mode, all sorts of fancy stuff in Illustrator and Photoshop. But you can also do a lot in the other tools that are more quick and not too dirty. So the idea is that halos allow you to do quick label enhancement. So better quick halos, helpful tips. Don't make halos white or black. They don't need to be. Pick a neutral background color and tint your halo with a bit of color. Simple, easy, just as quick. Soften the halo's edge if you can. Not all the tools have this. The blur in Mapbox is great. The QGIS has a transparency. So does ArcGIS Pro has some transparency abilities. I didn't find a blur tool in ArcGIS Pro, but maybe I didn't look hard enough. Make your halo wide enough so it works and doesn't buzz. I think the vibration of halos is like the primary thing you're trying to get away from. And then match different halo colors for different features. Take the time to do those, and you'll be a lot better off with your halos, and you'll have angels instead of devils. Thank you.